The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Melancon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the gentleman for yielding and for his leadership. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support the Gulf Coast Restoration Amendment for one simple reason. Responsible oil spill response legislation must include funding to address the rapid deterioration of our crumbling coast. Coastal erosion has chipped away at our barrier islands, beaches, and marshes for decades. Louisiana alone loses a football field of coast every 38 minutes and is set to lose another 500 square miles by 2050. But the BP oil spill will accelerate land loss as our marshes die from exposure to oil and chemical from the cleanup. This disaster has effectively hit the fast-forward button on an already terrible problem. BP will foot the bill for the cleanup of efforts. We'll hold them to their responsibility and their word, but they're not legally bound to address the accelerated land loss as a result of the spill. My amendment will make certain they don't simply clean the water and walk away from the long-term damage to our coast and our marshes. My amendment would create a new civil penalty on Gulf Coast spills of more than 1 million barrels. The owner or operator of the rig would be responsible for paying $200 million per 1 million barrels spilled to fund environmental restoration projects to save the Gulf Coast. Restoration projects would be spread across the Gulf Coast states and would be overseen by the Gulf Coast Coordination Council, a task force of federal, state, and local stakeholders created by this bill. My amendment is deficit neutral and comes at no cost to taxpayers or to the federal government. Survival of the Gulf Coast fragile ecosystem and the fishing and tourism industries that rely on them hinges upon successful restoration of our wetlands. Without them, many Gulf communities will vanish and the rest of the country will lose access to the seafood and recreation they have enjoyed for decades. The Gulf Coast is America's working coast. We contribute $3 trillion annually to the economy. 7 of our country's top 10 ports are located in the Gulf, and 40% of our nation's seafood is harvested from its waters. President Obama has charged the oil spill response team with finding long-term solutions for repairing our coast. Our families back home are depending on Congress to restore their livelihoods, and we have that opportunity today. Earlier this month, just after news broke that BP had finally capped their well, Bob Marshall of the Times-Picayune wrote a lengthy column about the long road ahead for South Louisiana in this cleanup. He wrote, and I quote, "We need to remember this is a temporary problem on top of a permanent disaster. Long after BP's oil is gone, we'll still be fighting for survival against a much more serious enemy, our sinking, crumbling delta. Our coast is like a cancer patient who has come down with pneumonia, and that's serious but curable. After the fever breaks, he still has cancer. Our officials' focus should remain on stopping the activities that continue to destroy our marshes and getting national support for projects that can protect what we have left." He's right, and make no mistake, this is that time. 5 years after Hurricane Katrina and Rita, our country is again focused on a tragedy in South Louisiana. For the past 102 days, every time you opened your paper, turned on the evening news, or saw the well, our oiled marshes, and the wildlife, and our people struggling to get through the day and unable to imagine a better tomorrow. We're staring at a cleanup that will take a decade or more to only get there if we address our disappearing coast. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support my Gulf Coast Restoration Amendment. This is that time, and we can't wait another day. I yield back my time.